Welcome everybody to, I think, what will be a most interesting talk and for Google standards even a bit unusual. So I think I spend a few sentences to set up what the topic will be about. We will hear about communities in the Western Amazon and their spiritual traditions. Now, typically, if you think of highly developed spiritual traditions, what might come to mind? You might think of Zen monasteries in Japan, or sadhus in India, or Mount Athos in Greece. But what is maybe much less known is that there are also highly refined spiritual traditions in the Amazon. However, like with many miracles in the rainforest, we tend to destroy them before we learn about them. And this is actually a concern dear to Paulo's heart. And the tradition we are talking about, anthropologists would generally categorize this as shamanism. Now, shamanism, being probably the oldest of all religions, has something in common with modern science. Both place a premium on direct experience. That makes this approach to finding more out about the universe attractive to the Western scientific mind. At least I feel that way. And the specific strand of shamanism we are going to hear about is about using sacramental plants, entheogens, to basically explore, or I should maybe say this differently, the sincere student of nature would argue that entheogens are a legitimate tool for the student of nature. Normally we think of, when we think of exploration of nature, we think of things like our best tools. What are those? We would think of things like the Large Hadron Collider or the Planck or Herschel telescopes that just have been deployed. These are sort of the epitome of human exploration tools. However, psychedelic or psychoactive substances have a role to play in exploring what is probably the most riddling of natural phenomena, and that's the phenomena of human consciousness. And why is this so? I think there are two reasons. One is methodological. Essentially, when you partake psychedelic substances, your consciousness gets altered. So we get to see different states, or we can see what conscious could be or could entail or could not entail. So essentially we get a much more plastic view, or more like a 3D view of what consciousness could be, because we understand better what are the qualities that belong there and which ones don't. And that is a little bit akin to methods we use in machine learning, where if you have too little data, let's say we have only a few images, you change those images a little bit. Let's say you skew them or you scale them, and you still get this way with limited original data, more data points for your study. And then the last reason this might be a valid tool is that the human nervous system, by virtue of being a physical substrate, takes part in all physical interactions, known or unknown. And through the direct physical interactions with the external world, it is conceivable that percepts can be formed that are in ways that are unknown to us as of yet. In that sense, I feel that this whole area is extremely fruitful and intriguing for people working, like many people here, in artificial intelligence systems. So Paulo, Roberto, Silva, Souza, to say the full name, has spent a large part of his life to the preservation of such traditions in the Western Amazon. He's actually a classically trained psychologist from Gama Filho University in Rio, and he has worked in the Anna Freud Clinic and in a suicide prevention center in Rio de Janeiro. And then in 1976, he had his first encounters with a tradition we will hear later more about, the tradition of Santo Daime, and was introduced by Padrinho Sebastian. And then later in '85, he played a very important role working with the Brazilian government in legalizing those traditions. So in Brazil, these are perfectly legal activities, and while this is not necessarily the case in all countries as of yet. He also has worked with the United Nations and IBAMA, which is the Brazilian Environmental Protection Agency, to preserve key forests that protect some of those communities, because of the traditions, of course, depend on preserving the land that hosts them. And he has recently, I know this is dear to his heart, started in the Private Heritage Foundation in Rio de Janeiro, a project called Eco Park Topo da Mata, and we are also going to hear about this. And Paulo is a desired speaker. It's not just talking here at Google, but he has given lectures at Harvard and many other places as a distinguished expert on these topics. So with that, I'm going to hand it to Paulo.
Thank you. Well, I'm happy to be here, but my heart feels very sad about what is going on with our mother. Has a fever that is affecting us all. I'm going to talk about the role of sacramental plants in environmental protection. Sacramental plants, they do open the perception. They expands awareness. They grant what we can call the visionary experience that take us to self-knowledge. When our perception opens and our awareness expands, we can commit an act of knowledge in the relationship between us and ourselves, between us and our similars, between us and the cosmos and the universe. We know. First, we're going to take a look about what's going on with rainforests. Rainforests used to occupy 12% of land surface. Nowadays, it's only 2 or 3%. And this only 2 or 3% lives half of life species on the world. So far, we know around 10 million species, so we can say that 5 million species lives at the rainforest. But the situation, as we're going to see, it's not so good at all. Here's Africa. So from Gabon to Kenya, we have the equatorial line, where Congo, Rwanda, Tanzania, Uganda, the forest is still there. But this is very fragile. This is very endangered because of political, social, and economic problems in Africa. This is a very vulnerable ecosystem. If the environmental programs or environmental protection systems, if they stop it somehow, it's a matter of months, just a few months, everything may vanish. The wildlife, the flora, the fauna, see. Because as we understand now, environmental protection alone, it doesn't do the job. You see. We need to always bring social inclusion and local economic development. Otherwise, the situation there is very sad and is finishing, is disappearing. That's the situation in Africa. Now we're going to turn a little the globe, and we're going to see the next area, that is Southeast Asia. That goes from India, Malaysia, Indonesia. That is really threatened too by development. In the beginning was Japan, who was pushing the extraction of natural resources in an unsustainable way. Situation now got worse because of China. China and India, they are draining all natural resources around. If we can take a look at, for instance, Laos, Birmania, Thailand, many forests already disappear. There's, in the place of those forests, they have palm oil plantations. Huge palm oil plantations occupy now a place that was a nature sanctuary, full of rainforest. So that's the situation in Asia. That's a really difficult situation. See, because again, social and economic problems are affecting very much the possibility to protect those places. Now we're going to move the globe a little again, and then we go to Amazonia. That's in South America. Amazonia is the last unbroken piece of rainforest in the world. It's formed by 9 countries. As you can see, you have the Guyanas there, and then Venezuela, Colombia, Ecuador, Peru, Bolivia, and Brazil. But it's still huge. We already lost 20% of that forest. 20% doesn't exist anymore. But you still have a huge piece of forest with gigantic quantities of life, an incredible variety of qualities of life. You see, that's the megadiversity. You see, for instance, in 1 hectare, like 2.5 acres, you can find 487 species of trees. In US, Canada together, in millions and millions of acres, you find 700 species of trees. The first time I had contact with biodiversity in Amazonia was in an ice cream shop. When I get there to choose an ice cream, 40 flavors of fruits that I never heard of before. I took a half hour to choose one after trying many ones. You see, if you go to like a little village by the river and you ask kids about names of fishes, they come with 50, 60 names of fishes. In Amazonia, we have more species of fishes than the Atlantic Ocean. So far, they know 2,500 species, but there's much more. We have 8 species of birds. It's a gigantic biological treasure. It's the last great biological treasure, patrimony of humankind. We don't know how much is the value of that. In the 90s, people say that Amazonia could worth like $33 trillion. And now people are talking about more than that. So when we burn the forest, we are burning money. When we burn the forest, we are burning very precious biological resources. And this megadiversity comes from time, you see. Temperate forests, they came after the last glacier age, very young, like 11,000 years old. Amazonia is at least 2 million years old. Time enough to life proliferate in hundreds of thousands of species. Amazonia is a Pleistocene refuge. The ice didn't touch it there. So, for instance, in Europe, they have like 320 species of butterflies. In Amazonia, there's 1,300 species of butterflies. There's so many ants that there's no word for ant in Amazonia because each species has their own name. So they have 30, 40 names for ants. Fruits, for instance, in the Western world, it consumes around 200 species of fruits. But in the forest, there are 3,000 species of fruits. Indigenous people, they use 2,000 species of fruits. So it's a huge, everything's very huge there. In just one single tree, you can find more species of insects than entire England. In 1 square mile, you have 50,000 species of insects. So life there is so present. Sometimes when you are in the jungle, you have to speak very loud because the birds, they sing so loud that you cannot hear each other. And we have there the equatorial geographic position. That means equatorial sun. and 8 months of rain. So it's a luxury there. Everything goes very fast in the Amazonia. Why? Because the ecosystem, the Amazonia ecosystem, is a hydrobiological system composed by 3 factors. First is evapotranspiration. During the day, there's the evaporation. During the night, the transpiration. That forms a gigantic amount of water, steam in the air, water steam, that comes back to the forest as rain. So this is a cycle that feeds the forest. And unfortunately, this cycle has been interrupted by deforestation. Once there is deforestation, no more evapotranspiration, no more water steam, no more rain, and what happens? What happens is desertification. That, I would say, is going at a rate that is almost unbelievable. Last 20 years ago, 20, 30 years ago, people talked about 1 football field per minute being deforested. Now people are talking about 1 football field per second. And in the future, we don't know what's going to happen. So I was there. I saw there in the 70s, still the 70s, the 80s was only the axe. And then at the 7 and 8 came the chainsaw. And we think that was the end, but there's something worse than the chainsaw. Giant tractors with a sheep chain between them, you see, and they go and they put hundreds of forests per minute down. Because Amazonia was an old ocean. So if you dig there, you find sand. So there's just a humus level. So the trees have horizontal roots, very easy to go down. You see, and it's going down. It's going down. They put everything down, let it dry. When it's dry, fire. Fire. You can see almost like a 2,000 kilometer long smoke cloud when there's the fire season there. So it's something that everybody there is really astonished with this catastrophe of unbelievable proportions. You see, and the communities who preserve their spiritual tradition, who preserve the use of sacramental plants, they are studying themselves. You see, they expand their consciousness, they open their perception to understand this drama. And what is our destiny? Are we supposed to burn together with the trees? What's going to happen? We feel very endangered there. We feel the heat of the fire in our neck. See, and we are seeing everything being destroyed. Then we use the sacramental plants to understand that. And then we see like a drunken hippopotamus at the Louvre Museum. See, breaking everything, destroying everything. The day after, where is the Mona Lisa? Where is the art? Where are the sculptures? Everything destroyed, with no possibility to be replaced. So where is another perspective that we see that is the environmental adipose. You are familiar with the adipose, the Greek myth that killed the father to possess the mother. For us, white people, killed the father God, has no more limits, no more ethics, and is raping the mother now. You see, blind and guilty. Doesn't know what's doing. So to understand a little further than that, the sacramental plants in our visionary experiences took us 10,000 years ago, you see, to the glacier ages, you see, when many people died. Many people died. People live till 25, 27 years old now. Many people died of hunger, of cold, you see. This was a big trauma in the collective inconscience of humankind. That creates a compulsion of accumulate. Only who accumulated survived. Accumulated in the body as fat, and accumulated outside too. You see, and immediately was created a relationship between accumulation and power. The ones who accumulated, they gain power over the ones who did not accumulate it. And we can see that because there is no limit. They came and they ask for 1,000 leopard skins, and next time they ask for 10,000. already asking if it's possible to get 100,000. And it ends. It has ended many, many places already. You see what be happening in Africa with elephants, with rhinos. It's ending. It's vanishing. But in this ice trauma theory, there is a lack there because indigenous people, they crossed over the glacier ages, but they didn't lose the respect for the earth. They didn't split it from the earth. In our culture, there was a guy there that was expulsed from paradise. And then there was a splitting between man and nature. Indigenous people, they preserved the connection. They kept the connection with the earth. They lived for thousands and thousands of years from animals, from plants, and when Europeans get there, everything was untouched. In Patagonia, you cannot even walk in the beach with so much sea lions, sea elephants, seals. It was a matter of 200 years, everything disappeared. So we understand that these communities that preserve their traditions, they are spearhead now the fight for environment. They didn't lose the connection with Mother Earth. That's the role now of the sacramental plants. In Americans, from Canada to Patagonia, most of the culture use teaching plants in their religious rituals, with the purpose of illumination, healing, initiation, rites of passage. But when the science from Europe arrived there, they commit a kind of scientific mistake. You see, when they heard the report of the Indians about what are the effects of those plants, they classify it as hallucinogenics. You see, and that was a mistake because those plants, they don't cause any kind of hallucination. Hallucination, according to psychiatry, is the perception with no object. You see something that's not there. It's a projection of yours. An hallucinatory state is a pathological state of mind. You don't have time reference. You cannot communicate. You're alienated from yourself and from reality. You see, this doesn't happen with the use of sacramental plants. Fortunately, in this state, there was a guy last century called Aldous Huxley that he brought the concept of the visionary state. Visionary state is very different from hallucinatory state. Visionary state, you keep time-space reference. You see there is no break in your communication. It's the contrary. Instead of alienated, you have expansion of awareness. Awareness expands to where? Awareness expands as a sphere inside mind, reaching subconscious and unconscious levels. That's Sigmund Freud dream. Unconscious become conscious, and then you know yourself. So these plants has been having a very important role because they keep the people connected to nature. You see, when you meet yourself as part of an immense mystery that is life in the universe. And so, keeping this connection, people are facing the environmental challenge there. I'm going to tell about three brief stories about people who were using those plants and somehow succeeding to the fight for the preservation of the environment. The first was Padrinho Sebastian. Padrinho Sebastian is my father-in-law. He's a great spiritual leader in the Amazon. And in his visionary experiences in the 70s, he saw the fire coming. You see, he saw a big fire coming. Everything was burning around him. You see, that happened 10 years later. In the 80s, the places that he saw burning, actually they were already burned. You see, and he was told to take his people and move to the deep of the forest. And he did it. He went to a very hostile area full of malaria, hepatitis, black fever. Yeah, but it well succeed. They open their rubber trails, make subsistence agriculture, have their houses. Everything again was in harmony. You see, just when they reach this point of balance, appears the biggest cattle rancher in the region, with false papers, hired killers claiming for the land. You see, and in this moment, that was 1982. I was arriving there, heading a scientific commission to study Santo Daime, together with the government, military, because this time was military dictatorship in Brazil, the military, federal police, scientific commission to study about the sacrament, the uses, if it was harm or no harm, was the effect. So I formed a commission with psychologists, anthropologists, sociologists to study the use of sacramental plants there. And that was the right moment to arrive, because so the military helped the community to move to another place, because Padre Sebastian, he didn't want to be there anymore. Yeah, so there was a place called Seldomapia, when the community in 1982 moved to there. 1 year, take 1 year to move, you see, and we stayed there, and we are very happy because finally we got the support. Yeah. So we went to Brasília, capital of Brazil, to receive the land titles, but there was a request that we should deforestate 40% of each land title that we received to prove that we are occupying. And then we refused to sign, we refused to accept that, because that means that we have to deforestate we have to cut 40% of the rubber trees. And we live from the rubber trees that time. So we stayed there waiting for the next cattle rancher to come and to wipe out everything. Yeah. Fortunately, this time I was invited to speak at Harvard University for the Harvard speech series. Yeah, and I met very interesting people there that took me to the United Nations Environmental Program in New York. And they liked very much our solution, because we are showing the problem, but we are bringing a solution that we call in that time extractive reserve. You can live from the forest without cutting one tree. Our mother is so generous that we can live from fruits, from oils, from medicinal plants, from dyes. There's a huge renewable natural resources stock there that we can live from there the entire year, without any kind of deforestation. So they took us, the United Nations took us to the president of Brazil. We proposed our solution. So we were granted with 1.5 million acres of land. That's still there till today, is a preserved area, is environmental protection area, and we are developing their sustainable extraction. And forest management plans. It's very important to know the forest, to know what we have there and how to deal with each species. So fortunately, Seldomapia is going well and is developing a whole new system of life there. The other case is the Yawanawa. Yawanawa is an Indian nation that lives in the West Amazonia in the state of Acre. These people, they suffered a lot in the hands of the rubber barons. Since the end of 19th century, they live in a system of slavery. They were slaves of the rubber barons. The rubber barons used to, how you say when you do the cattle, they brand their names in the skin of the Indians. You see, if the Indian runs away from the rubber field, they could catch the guy. So, but the Yawanawa was a very strong, brave people. They turned away the rubber barons. They got their own independence. There was the first indigenous people in the West Amazonia to have their land titles. And so they were granted with 700,000 acres of forest. But unfortunately, when they're feeling that they were happy and balanced, came religious missionaries. And religious missionaries replaced material slavery for spiritual slavery. You see, they were prohibited to use any sacraments, any ceremonies, any rituals. The shamans were banned. You see, and so they lived very hard life during 30 years. 30 years they were occupied by these missionaries. See, so in 1992 in Rio de Janeiro there was the ECHO 92, was a United Nations Environmental Conference. And the son of the chief of the tribe, that's my friend, he came to Rio. I introduced them to many people in the conference, to the United Nations Environmental Program. He knew a lot of good things that was happening, was going on in that time. And then he came back to the tribe and turned away the missionaries with a very elegant way, very soft, very peaceful. He thanks for everything. They receive it, and they say, please come back to your country, because many people there are needing you. They are much more than we are here. So thanks for everything. Goodbye. And this was do it in a so soft way that the missionaries, they didn't have any option. They left. You see. And when they left, there was incredible rescue of a spiritual and cultural legacy of the Indians. They brought the shamans back to the tribe. They put the shaman in the center of the tribe and said to the shaman, please tell us who we are. And the shaman, you really want to know? Let's use let's call the plants. The plants will teach you who you are. You see. And then now Yawanawa is a very solid people, indigenous tribe that are had the fight for the environment there. Yeah. So, but the point is, they need help. All of them, they need help. Yeah. Then union. Yeah. Then Mother Nature, she waits for the union of their children to preserve life from terrible enemies. Yeah. So we are waiting that Google can help the Yawanawa, interconnecting them with the world. You see, there's a very interesting possibilities that we can do with the websites, computers, GPS, sense remote monitoring. That's very important for them. If they're in their tribe, if they could use it, Google Earth, they could monitor their immense territory. You see, and there's very nice advantage techniques when you can photograph the land by airplane. With their air photos, you go to the field with the GPS, and then you can mark about the tree that you're seeing in the photograph is a Brazil nut tree, for instance. You see, so and then when you interface the air photos with satellite photographs, you can do forest inventory through satellite photographs. By the shape of the leaf of the tree, you can identify which tree is, how many trees you have. So you can monitor a very immense territory using those systems. And now it's time. Now it's time to unite the ancient wisdom with very modern technologies. Like that, we can overcome. There's a hope. Even that we are feeling big of a catastrophe, incredible environmental catastrophe, there's a hope. There's a hope in many people. Many people trust life. Many people trust the Creator. The Creator, he didn't create that just by chance, you see. He knew that would happen. A human can know that. Demographic explosion is a matter of time. Natural resources be all consumed. But still we are created. So we have a hope. And this hope is based on union. Union of all the people, union of all the children of earth, to be together to protect our mother. And another case, another community that use those sacramental plants too are Seldomar. Seldomar is a natural heritage private reservation. In Brazil, if you buy land, if you have land, you can turn your land to a private reservation once you commit to conserve and to preserve life there. So we live in Rio. Rio is the only city, it's like 6 million, it's a metropolis. It's the only city in the world that has a national forest inside the city. It's a big green island surrounded by building, cars, the city itself. And Seldomar, we live in the border of the national park. You can see that the Jesus statue, Copacabana, Ipanema. Can you see the girl from Ipanema there? She's in the beach there. She's very beautiful. And you see, so we are neighbors. We are a permanent preservation area of the Tijuca National Park. So there's an environmental vocation for our land. You see, what's the best sustainable use for that land? You see, for us is the social expansion of environmental consciousness. Our goal there is that. Because we can gain a lot of visibility. We can receive hundreds of thousands of visitors per year. So what we're going to do with that? We want to provide a kind of nature's experience, bring people back to nature, you see, and they can be educated in a way that they can expand their awareness and become natural defenders. The problem with these national parks, conservation units, very beautiful places, is that there's nothing to do there. I've been here at Eureka, in the north of California, where the sequoias, Eureka. I've been there to Eureka, and I took my family. It was very beautiful there, but we stayed there 10, 15 minutes. Very beautiful, take photographs, the ocean, the trees. But the kids say, oh, there's nothing to do, let's go. You see. So there's not enough permanence time to create bonds with nature. You see. So we want to create, we want to provide ecological experience to the people there. That we call eco-adventures. Yeah. We need to keep the people in the forest in a way that they feel connected. And they feel good, they feel great. They feel the force, the strength, the pleasure of being in nature. You see, they create a bond, and once you create a bond, you start to defend that. Yeah. And the way for us to do that, first, we need to democratize the access to nature. Yeah. There are many beautiful places on nature that only tough guys or with a lot of skills, availability to run risks, that can go there. Yeah. Old people, children, they cannot go because you need to be a mountain climber, you need to be an explorer. So we try to bring access. People can have access to the forest. Like a sky tram that goes over the canopies. Yeah. You can go there. And from there you can do many things, like you're seeing there. This, for instance, is led over tracks. Yeah, that no engine, you just have brakes, by gravity you go. Is very fun, attractive, exciting. Yeah. We can have, for instance, Via Ferrata. We have a big rock wall after the forest. Yeah. Via Ferrata is done in a way that with those iron rings, you can climb, you can have place for put your feet. You can bring your family to mountain climb. Mountain climbing, from 100 people, make 1 or 2 can do it. Yeah. With the Via Ferrata, 50% of the people can do it. So we are thinking about this is the sky tram, yeah, that you can go over the canopies and watch the forest, watch the birds, everything there. Yeah. And we have another attractions too, like a rope course. This will be the visitor center. Yeah. Everything in this park will be an aerial, yeah, because the heart of the forest is the floor of the forest, is the ground. In the ground that lives microorganisms, and that makes the recycle of the forest. And we have in the forest too the animal trails that you cannot touch that. Yeah. So people will always be over the forest, in a way that they can really appreciate, that they can really receive environmental education. Yeah. We have too the suspended trails, yeah, that people can walk over the forest. Yeah. Here's one more. Well, the suspended trails are trails that you walk over the forest, and in that trails we want to make a kind of educational experience. We want to give voice to the animals, you see. So the animals can come and tell their story about what is going on with them. Like a character in the future. You walk in the suspended trail, and suddenly behind a tree comes an Amur leopard and say, help, we are dying. And he starts to tell his story. You see, this for the kids, for young people, is very important. So people can really expand their awareness about what's going on Earth and do something. After the awareness expanded, take people to action. Each visitor that comes to a park like that will plant a tree. Each tree of that will be replanted in devastated areas, in the slums, in places in Rio that is already deforested. Will be a whole reposition of the forest there, even bringing the local young people to participate in these environmental actions. See? So that's what we are doing. That's what we can do. And I'm here. I feel like I pronounce that bottle. I am a bottle with a message inside. Understand? I'm coming from the people that are cast out there in Amazonia, isolated, very far away from this kind of a world, asking for help, asking for support. The sun is only one. The moon too is only one that appears to all of us. And we need help at this moment. We need to fortify these communities, you see. That's what we can call sustainable development, I said before, you see. Environmental protection only succeeds well when it's connected to social inclusion and local economic development. Even those three factors, they need to be in balance too. If local economic develops too big, environmental protection decrease, social inclusion not so. It needs a balance. With this balance, we can really protect, we can really keep to the next generation's life on Earth. See? So that's why I'm here. That's why I'm here requesting for help to the local communities that are there facing this incredible challenge that's to keep life on Earth. Any questions? Or comments? Yes.
Vou perguntar em português, depois eu traduzo para o inglês.
Beleza.
Sobre o Yawanawa, quão desenvolvidos tecnologicamente eles são? So my question is, for the Yawanawa tribe that we saw, how developed technologically are they?
Not so much. They're very low in the matter of technology there. The young people there is very bright. The young people there is very intelligent, you see. And they understand about that. Now, when I went there 3 months ago, and we talked very much about all the possibilities to bring technology for them to do their environmental programs, protection. They need a forest management plan. We are signing a cooperation agreement with Jardim Botânico of Rio de Janeiro to develop this forest management plan. And they get very excited when I talk about the possibility about monitoring their territory through Google Earth, for instance. So their level of technology is low, but their potential, they have immense potential to learn and to work with those new technologies in order to preserve their environment, you see. Yeah, the local government, they are installed computers in the school. They have computers only in their little school there, you see, but from there, this can be enlarged. And we are thinking some program very important for us is the formation of new shamans. You see, shaman is an endangered species, not only in the Amazon. All over the world you can see that. Young people are not so interested, and the shamans they don't have so much power as they used to have in the past. So it's very important that we can work in the formation of new shamans. That is a program that we have with the Yawanawa. The shaman there, it calls Yawa. He's a 97 years old guy, and he's like an encyclopedia. He knows everything about the forest. So we're thinking about programs that can train young people, not so young, but people for 40, 50 years old can be trained as shamans. They have the sacred village. They have their village, but they have a sacred village that's only for shamans. You see, they have their retreats, they make their diets, they learn how to use the medicines, and then they can become new shamans. So we are improving programs that modern technology can come and the ancient wisdom can be preserved. Of course, we can make a Google project for there. Many information, many knowledge can be stored. Video recording, voice recording. There are many things that can be stored, but I believe that this is not enough. See, we need really new shaman. This is not stored only in computer files, but in people. People that can, is the way that has been working for thousands of years. Oral tradition comes from a generation to the other. You see, we need to assure that this process will continue. How to preserve the transfer of knowledge from a generation to the other. This is Yawanawa. Yawanawa is a 97 years old guy. That's the shaman I'm talking about. He's like a boy. He's very young. Yes.
I find this aspect with difficulties of training new shamans, that this is a bottleneck. Shows in some ways how different sacramental plants are, let's say, from ordinary drugs used in the West, like alcohol. I don't think that, let's say, Ireland or the US or anybody's worried, oh, the kids don't drink enough anymore. That's just not a concern. While using those plants as a commitment is completely different from those recreational
Yes, it's completely, yes, because there's for instance, alcohol. Alcohol, people, sometimes they drink to forget. Drink to forget their problems, their stress, their lives. Drink to forget. Sacramental plants, we drink to remember. Instead of forget, we remember who we are, what is our nature, what is our divine nature. Drugs, alcohol are alienating substance. Like escape, you escape from the reality. You escape it from what you're going on. Sacramental plants is the opposite effect. They bring you to a very important encounter with yourself in another state of awareness. Then you can really see who you are, where you come from, where are you going, what you've been doing of your life. So that's a quality difference there. That's very important. Even there's some statistics already about that the indigenous people or another communities that go for alcohol, they vanish, they get extincted. The ones who use sacramental plants, they are more strong. That's what we call the jump of the cat. In Portuguese, é o pulo do gato, né? The jump of the cat. Because the indigenous people, they've been so traumatized, they were so offended, they were so humiliated, they were so hurt, that naturally they make a traumatic close. They close, they don't trust anybody anymore, they don't want to see no new people. And when they close themselves, they isolate themselves. And they start to shrink, they start to disappear, they start to vanish. Yawanawa, they are doing the pulo do gato. They are opening, they travel, they come to our community in Rio, they sing their songs, we dance together, use the sacramental plants together, the medicines they have. They have incredible medicines that most of the people doesn't know. You see? I don't know if about here, but many people, for instance, they have the ice drop, entheogenic ice drop. They like very much to eat a kind of monkey. It's a gourmet monkey. They like it very much. But the monkey, very smart, is the master of camouflage. He can be like in that wall and you don't see because he camouflage with the bark of the tree. So the Indians, they cut a palm tree, they put that in the eye. It hurts a lot. Wow. First 2 minutes, it seems that your eyes are burning. And then after that, it opens, three-dimensional. It's natural Amazon 3D. And then they see the monkey, they get it, and they eat it. You see, snake oil entheogenic. That people, they expand their conscience open by skin contact. They put that. You see. So, and this is 4 or 5. There's like 20, 30, or even more that people doesn't know. And instead of knowing, they are burning. Instead of studying, they are destroying. You see, that's the drama. You see, our hope is that environmental conscience already is expanding, and due to this expansion, that many things are being protected so far. So this is our mission. It's the mission of each human on the earth. It's not a mission only for the scientists or for the environmentalists or for whoever. Every Earth citizen has the right to exist in the power of the Creator. Each species, each being has the right to exist. So as humans, it's our mission to protect our mother at this moment in many different ways. In many different ways. Yes? Of all the population? Well, yeah, it's still happening. It's still happening. It's still happening. But now less. You see. But let's say there is still in Amazonia there is still around 10,000 missionaries with the Bible in their hand. You see.
To go and do some studies with some professors in some of these indigenous languages, but those who were led by missionaries, they just said no. Mm-hmm. No, you don't come here. Or they would say things like, okay, we'll let you study the language, but we need access to that other population. Mm-hmm. And then the professors would say, well, no, we don't want you there. You know? So they block access, at least in my experience.
Yeah, but there is going on a silent revolution, you see, among indigenous people towards the missionaries. You see, in the beginning, because indigenous people is very humble. I don't know if you've been already in an indigenous tribe. It's incredible the way they receive us there. It's incredible the way they make us comfortable. They open their houses, they open their families, they open their hearts. You see, I took my kids to the indigenous tribe there. I was amazed at the way they interacted. In 1 or 2 days, they were already feeling like a warrior and an Indian. They're being initiated by the shamans. You see, I'm very proud of that. I'm very happy that I could take some kids out of the computers and Facebooks and MySpace and all those things, and they have a live experience in the forest. My 16 years old kid, he met a sacred animal. You see, there you get there, you need to undress. Are you not going dressed to the ritual? Say, oh yes, can we wear Bermudas? No, you're supposed to wear a skirt and painted your body and use a feather dress and drink the medicines. And suddenly, for my son, his feather dress get down and become a true animal and starts to fly over his head. And it starts to have a visionary experience. And this animal, with his claw, he cut the air. And when he cut the air, opened a passage for another dimension. And he took my son to this dimension. And they flew together. My son, just 16 years old, has a typical shaman astral travel. Even he went to our house in Rio de Janeiro. He saw his sister sleeping in her bedroom. He came back. He flew over the forest. He saw somebody there. It was him. And then he came back to his body again. See, this is a very precious visionary experience. You see that the Indians, the indigenous people, they open for us. You see, and there is this thing that this missionary system is not working very much. You see, it starts to fall apart. So, and the Yawanawa, what happens to them, there are 11 other indigenous nations in the West Amazon that follows their example. So many areas, missionaries are being turned away already, and people are having again their spiritual independence.
Not so much a question, rather prompting you to talk a little bit. One thing that sort of amazes me and that's so little known is the degree of knowledge and sophistication that comes with mastering the use of various entheogenic substances. Mm-hmm. Like yesterday when we talked, you explained me how, let's say, Kampa frog is being used, or the muka plant, which has a very specific use, only to be used once in your life.
Yeah.
Maybe you can talk a few anecdotes like this, which I find quite startling.
Yes, the Kambo is a very interesting medicine. Yeah. It's an entheogenic too, and it's taken from a frog. There's a green frog in the Amazon. Yeah. Then it uses the resin over the body of the frog. And we are talking about how people discover that. Now we are talking about the ways of knowledge, because there's a classic way of knowledge through deduction. Yeah. But there is another way of knowledge through revelation. You see. How they understand, I have thousands and thousands of species, how they know that a vine like that with a leaf like that will be together and become a sacramental use as the power. The kambo, you get a vine and you light that vine and it starts to burn the skin, making some points in the skin. You burn here, maybe 7 points. Yeah. You take that skin out. There's a fresh skin under. You take the kambo, the resin of the frog, and you put there. It's a matter of 2 or 3 minutes. You feel like burning. It's immense heat takes you see. And then starts a very strong process of cleaning. Yeah. Usually the Indians use that when they have bad luck on hunting. Yeah. They have bad luck. They don't find the hunt, or they shoot but they miss, or they shoot but they miss the hunt. The alligator comes and eat. They are bad. They have the bad luck. Something they call Panema. This kind of bad luck. So they are close. Things are not working well in their lives. So they took the kambo. And the kambo makes physical cleaning, very important physical cleaning, mind cleaning too, emotional cleaning, spiritual cleaning. You see. So it's a purification. That's the common factor between all the sacramental plants in the world, not only in Amazonia. What's similar is this cleaning process, this purifying process. You see, is that kind of purging effect that happens not only in the physical body, but happens mainly in the mind, in the personality. Many things that we hold in ourselves at the conscious level, they came up. They came up and they can be released. And once they are released, the effect is very good. It's a very good feeling that you feel clean, you feel pure, you feel strong, you feel more sharp, more intelligent, you feel more encouraged, you have more love, your capability to forgive enhances very much. You see, your hope in life, everything changes very much. And this they knew from the kambo. Yeah. They have the Ruma too. Ruma is an entheogenical snuff. Yeah, the one that you have a longer tube and you blow from the mouth to a nostril of somebody. Yeah. It's incredible the effect of this medicine in mind level. You see, one of the things that the Pope, Dalai Lama, the shamans, everybody looks for is a thought-free space in the mind. How to interrupt the thoughts. Buddhism, Taoism, all the religions, they look for that state when you're thoughts free. You don't break the connection. Some medicines from the Indians take us to there. See, the Ruma is the kind of effect that when you are under the effect of this medicine, that you enter in communion with the spirit of the medicine teaches you how to ascend inside of yourself to go to a place where, you see, where there's no thoughts, no memories, no imaginations, no fantasies, no confusions, you see. Yeah, because there's an art of contemplation in the visionary experience. Yeah. It's very important, the visionary experience, that you can interrupt your thoughts. You see. And once you interrupt your thoughts, a lot of imagery starts to come. The problem is that those images, they generate thousands of thoughts. And then you broke it again. So there's an art of being very quiet, art of dominate the mind, dominate the ego. The soul is more than the ego. The spirit is more than the ego. So the spirit can dominate and say, shh, I need to be stillness. The Tao, Chinese Tao, stillness, the nothing less, where everything is. You go to a place that there's no thoughts inside of you, and then you can connect. And then you can know. And then your life can be revealed to you. The meaning of your existence, the sense of your life, what you are doing here at this moment, can be revealed to you without rational categories, you see. It's a different way to know yourself. Yeah, but this needs to happen in a thoughts-free space inside the mind. And these medicines, they take us to there. Okay.
A few minutes over time, so maybe just check on any last question. Or yeah, okay.
My question is maybe also for Tatiana, but it's about preserving the oral traditions that you were talking about, and I was wondering about the question of language and whether how many indigenous languages there are, if each tribe has its own, and if they know any Portuguese, or if there's an interest in the young culture in Brazil to learn those languages and to improve that communication and to diffuse the knowledge that they have.
Yeah. There are many languages in the Amazon. Yeah? For instance, Santo Daime, there is a sacrament, has 42 names in the Amazon. There's 42 languages there of the people. Now there are 72 ethnical groups that use those plants. So they have 42 names. But basically, for instance, in Yawanawa, most of the people speak Portuguese. So it's a very good communication. And most of the indigenous people, most of them, they speak Portuguese. Yeah, so it's a good possibility. In their schools, they learn Portuguese and they learn their local language. So it's a very good possibility of communication and access. Even I'm thinking about a kind of, I would say that, exchange student program. Yeah? But based on the experience I have with my kids there, we are thinking very strong about that. Yeah? Take kids from the city to the forest where they can hunt, they can fish, they can run barefoot in the forest. You see, they can get in touch with some part of them that usually they cannot get in touch in the city. Yeah, when you go to the forest, when you're running in the wild, barefoot with Indians, you enter in contact with another dimension of yourself. You see. Yes.
No São Paulo e no Rio, aquelas crianças que são mesmo numa situação terrível.
And we want to do the same thing now. We want to bring some kids from the tribes to our houses, you see, so they can share some of the experience with us. They can learn, you see, they can, enlarge their vision of the world, you see, and so future generations starts to be allied. You see, that for us is very important, the preservation not only of nature, but of culture and spiritual traditions. Yeah, okay, my friend. Thank you.
you.